your cousin. I know, things have been hard lately. Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay.
Your father's a scientist.
What?
Think of the potential here. Burns victims, deformities.
Oh my God.
We could make people beautiful.
Go home.
Look at you. You look ridiculous.
What have you done?
Everyone is going to love me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, botched surgery survivors. Not sure how many of those there are out there, but there's got to be a few. I'm doing pretty well, Mike. How the hell are you doing?
Pretty good. I now have a Super Bowl I can skip because my team is not going, but otherwise, doing well.
I have a Super Bowl I could skip because it's the same damn two teams we just saw 2 years ago, so who the hell cares? The thing that sports fans don't understand is that if you're not a part of that city, like if you're not a fan of a dynasty, everyone else in the country hates your team. It happened with the Patriots. It happened with the Cowboys in the 80s and 90s, then the 49ers in the 90s. Now it's the Chiefs. It's like when a team is too dominant, it just makes it was boring. Like I'm sitting there watching the AFC Championship yesterday, just bored out of my mind because it's like, here we go again. It's just the Chiefs again. Like, that's not exciting. It's not fun football to watch. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah, like I'll never root for a division rival in the Super Bowl. So I was really hoping the Bills would find a way because I was like, I don't want to root for a three-peat either. But now it's like, anyways, apologies to Don for discussing sports. But how you doing, Don?
Well, I'm glad that I don't have a Super Bowl to watch because I didn't know it was coming up this soon, and I don't watch football in the first place. So other than that, I'm doing good.
My friend throws good Super Bowl parties, so if anything, I can enjoy the barbecue. But and
I'm just looking to get a free day to catch up on movies. Unless Tubi fucks me over and puts on the Super Bowl for everybody, but I'll probably just watch shit on Plex or something.
All right. Well, now that we got that out of the way, we are talking. Oh, so I don't know if we should maybe mention, because I think at the end of the last episode, we said we were doing presents on this episode. Yeah. I know two of us saw it, and for sure, I'm not sure if Don saw it or if we switched it.
By the time I would have gotten to it, it was already switched.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We switched it because it was mostly thriller. Like, I think there was like maybe one or two moments you could argue light horror, but even then, not really.
I mean, if you don't consider 2017's a ghost story horror, then Presence is 100% not horror, because they're pretty similar.
That's
movies.
kind of what I figured. That's kind of what I figured it was.
Yeah. I kind of figured that too when I read the synopsis of it, but it's almost a carbon copy. I mean, in fact, I actually prefer a ghost story. I think that one did the emotional impact of the death a lot better than this one did. But it's not a bad film. Mike and I both said on a previous show that we enjoyed it. There's some great performances in there. It's a legitimately good film, but it is solidly not horror. Even though it is a ghost story, it's just a very different kind of ghost story. Like I said, if you've seen 2017's A Ghost Story, then you've seen Presence. So you're fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So for any listeners that go to the theater for non-horror too, I would say go ahead and check it out. Just don't expect a horror movie.
Yeah, exactly. Just really, really good movie. I really liked it. I'm actually contemplating going to see it again. Like, I really, really enjoyed it, but it's solidly not horror. So,
All right, nice. So with that, we also got a Shudder release, which was nice. So we didn't really have to go digging around, which is fortunate because sometimes at the beginning of the year, it's hard to find stuff because you're dealing with a very limited selection. But luckily, Shudder put a release on there in the last week, and it is called Grafted. And the synopsis is: a bright but socially awkward exchange student takes her craving for popularity to horrifying heights. Interesting synopsis. At least that kind of really hides what like is going on in the movie. So, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that, just not to spoil anything. General thoughts. We'll start with Venom. What did you think of Grafted?
ultimately, I think Grafted was just an okay movie. Like, I really, really wanted to like this one, with a mostly Asian cast, with a film coming out of New Zealand. And obviously the subject matter, switching faces, if you will, but it left me wanting so much more. Ultimately, the movie is too much of a girls' coming of age movie that it just didn't really do a whole lot for me. Also, there's just so many tropes in here, tropes that I've railed against on previous episodes. Oh, the new girl in town who's forced to live with a family that she doesn't really want to, and she's being bullied at school and even by her own cousin within her own house. Yeah, shit, I've never seen that before. How original. But where the movie is mildly original is in the sense that this is a mad scientist story, but where kind of, I guess you could kind of look at it as the sins of the father are heaped onto in this case, the daughter, as she continues her father's very misguided scientific experiments with skin grafting. And then man, I'm not even sure where to start. Like, even our main character, Eden Hart as Way, her motivation just didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, she was a normal girl who just wanted to help the world, who wanted to help people with skin conditions. And then out of nowhere, she's just this insane girl who wants popularity. And it's like there was no catalyst event for that to happen. Yes, she's bullied. Yes, she's treated poorly by people in her house and people at school, but just her psycho turn was so unwarranted that it felt unnatural. It didn't feel organic. So yeah, and then again, this another movie that does it to me. You set up this great human antagonist just for me not to get to see him fucking die. I am so sick of this. Literally the worst piece of shit in this movie. And we literally, I'm trying to keep it as ambiguous as possible so as not to spoil anything, but we don't get the satisfying ending that I wanted. I was just so, like, I literally yelled at the screen when the credits start. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That's how you're going to end it. So yeah, this is a movie of expectations that are not, realized. I mean, there's good performances. It's not a bad movie. Let me get that out of the way. It's not a bad movie necessarily. There's some decent performances, some decent direction, decent score, cinematography. Like it looks like a nice movie. But for me, for my money, just Way's insanity was unwarranted. Some of the kills are very tame. Like, I don't know if they were trying to go for a PG-13 with this one, even though it's just a VOD release. But yeah, some fairly tame kills that could have been a lot better. Surgical scenes that could have been a lot gorier. Just, yeah, overall, the movie just left me wanting more. Like, everything that it gave me, I wanted more of it. And by the end of the movie, by the end of the 96 minutes, I just felt unsatisfied and not happy that I spent the time with this movie. Like I said, I wanted to cheer for Way. I wanted to get behind her. But like I said, her psychosis turn just made zero sense and was just completely unearned and unwarranted. And then, like I said, you leave the biggest piece of shit in the movie without getting his comeuppance. He gets some form of comeuppance, and some people might say it's even worse than death, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, overall, I wasn't very satisfied with Grafted. It's a movie that on paper seems like it should be a fairly enjoyable watch, but it just left me. A movie like this where I'm yelling at the screen for half the movie, I can't in good nature give it a good review. So yeah, overall, a middle of the road movie with some decent effects, though very neutered. It's almost like the movie was shot to be gorier and then got edited down because they wanted to make it a wider release movie, but obviously with it going straight to Shudder, they don't have to worry about ratings. So I'm not sure what the hell was up with this movie. So yeah, overall, nothing that I can really recommend. But I mean, if you need something to watch new this week and you've already watched Nosferatu 5 times, then yeah, give Grafted a shot. Otherwise, not essential viewing.
All right, I'm kicking it over to Don for your thoughts on Grafted.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher on it than Venom is, but I do acknowledge that there are a few issues here with this one. Sorry. I do enjoy the setup. I think there's a lot of fun to be had with how we get to see her arrive at her family's house, how we see the relationship blossom between her and her cousin. A lot of it is cliche, granted, but I think it kind of makes a little bit more sense in the overall scheme of things, how everything comes together. I mean, yes, everything does kind of come by the wayside, and it does, end on, a series of cliches that are, oh God, they're going for this route again. Yeah, how original. But I think with the way that it's going and, how everything is built up, how everything involves around the quest to uncover this experimental serum that, there are the best of intentions behind it, but, the psychosis and the psychotic, drive to make sure that he uses it for himself. I think it's kind of a little bit more, it makes a little bit more sense and it comes off a little bit more believable and, how everything comes together. I do have, a few issues with the second act and how everything kind of plays out. Yeah, I don't really want to spoil too much, but a lot of the interactions are kind of unbelievable with how everybody fails to notice, physical or behavioral differences that suddenly emerge. Not to, I'll kind of leave it at that and, talk about it more later on, but a lot of those issues just seemed really, really obvious that anybody would kind of put 2 and 2 together and figure out what was going on, but then they're kind of just overlooked and they don't have any real, there's no, logic behind how everything kind of materializes where nobody realizes what she's actually doing and how she's planning on getting away with everything that she's doing. A lot of that's kind of a little over the top and doesn't really feel like a believable story. The finale is a lot of fun. It kind of goes for this bonkers, special effects driven finale that is a little bit more enjoyable and has a little bit of fun to it. I can't say it's the best film I've seen this year, but I had enough fun with it that I can overlook a few issues. Yeah, there are, like I said, there are some factors here and there, but I think it's competent enough. I think it's, fun enough. Could you probably trim this down a couple of minutes and gotten this under 90? Sure. But I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a major issue, but yeah, for the most part, I enjoyed it well enough. Again, I wouldn't say it's essential viewing. I would say, if you're sure you don't have any other, best of 2024s to watch, you can probably give this one a watch, but I wouldn't say that it's, a pressing or priority as of now. Maybe somewhere down the line by the time, we get to Halloween and you're looking back on the year and trying to figure out what's, come out that you may have missed. This could be a perfect candidate, but I would probably say it's best to leave this just more as if I've got nothing else to watch, maybe I can give it a shot kind of a approach. But yeah, like I said, I don't really want to get a little. I don't want to do two more just to make sure that there's no real spoilers. But yeah, I liked it well enough. It's definitely got some issues, and there are some there are some big factors at play here that do kind of drag it down a little, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's fun enough for what it is, and international horror. Let's make sure that we support it, especially female-driven stuff. In this day and age, not to get political or anything, but yeah, just make sure I'm not rambling and in this without spoiling everything. Give it a shot if you've got nothing else to watch, but it's not a pressing priority at all. So back to you, Mike.
All right, so I found the movie to be entertaining. It was fun. It was good, not great. I actually felt that like it touched on a lot of similar themes to The Substance from last year. And to be honest, like I felt like this character actually had a little more like legitimate motivation to be using like what was going on. But cool body horror. I think it was kind of tropey. We definitely get like the whole female competition, the insecurities. We get the cultural stuff because like the one sister seems like more Americanized, and she's kind of embarrassed about her cultural roots. So we get that going on. And we get like ill-advised romances going on. We get jealousy. We get all the typical themes you would think of in a horror movie with like a primarily female cast. Venom hit on it. We do get a mad scientist angle in this. I like some of the practical effects. They do mix in some CGI, obviously, with grafted skin stuff going, but I also some of the practical effects were really cool. It was bloody in some parts. So overall, I found it enjoyable. I'm probably closer to Dawn than Venom. I don't think it was great, but like I think this was probably better than most of what we got on Shudder last year. And what else can I say that hasn't already been said? Like, if you like body horror, check this one out. Maybe even pair it with The Substance. I don't know, because I felt like there was a lot of similar themes going on, or at least attempting to. Even like the end, like an ending shot we got. Not counting what we get in like the closing credits, but like right before that, it almost kind of felt similar to the ending. But yeah, I found it enjoyable. It's 90 minutes, nothing too long. It's not going to keep you around for 2.5 hours or anything like that. But overall, I did like it. I'm trying to think of like everything I've seen this year. I haven't seen a ton of 2025s yet, but I would probably put this closer to the top. But like it doesn't really matter. We're like a couple episodes in, so saying that like it's your best or worst of the year doesn't mean a whole lot at this time. But yeah, I would definitely suggest it for body horror fans, and then everyone else check it out anyways because it's on Shudder, so easy to find. But I did like it, so I'll kick it back to you, Venom.
I would call this body horror light. This is barely body horror. I don't really. I don't know. Just because it's I'm trying to figure out the words I'm looking for. Yes, it's body horror, but it's like that on the cusp where it's barely body horror. It's really more a psychosis story. It's more a character study of Way than anything else. And I see what you're saying with The Substance, but man, even though I wasn't that high on The Substance, I still feel like it's an insult to compare this movie to The Substance.
Well, not in how good it is, better. For sure.
Not just in
Yeah,
effects, but in storytelling and performances and pretty much every single aspect. I understand what you're saying. Like I said, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I see the similarities. And like you said with that final shot at the end, yes, it does remind us of the final, bit of the substance. So I understand that. But I just feel like it's an insult to compare the two. Maybe just on a personal level, because obviously you guys are higher on it than I am. I am very obviously the lowest on this. I just found this to be an absolute drag, just not fun. Both Don and Mike have called this movie fun, and I'm scratching my head wondering where the fun was. But okay, so yeah, not like I said earlier, objectively not a bad movie. It's not. It just didn't work for me. And on top of the fact that by the second act, it just turns into Mean Girls, and I don't like Mean Girls. If I wanted to watch Mean Girls, I'd fucking watch Mean Girls. But yeah, it just this whole the movie just has so many issues for me personally that I just can't get behind it. I just can't. And like I said, the petty, vindictive nature of me as a horror movie watcher, 100% disappointed in the ending of this movie. I mean, like I said, it's not hyperbole when I said I yelled at my TV when the credits started. I literally, all caps, yelled at my fucking TV when the credits started. Like, that's the fucking ending you're going with? Are you kidding me? Anyway, not really much more I can talk about without getting into spoilers. So unless you guys have anything to add.
Nope, I don't think so.
Yeah, not without going into spoilers.
Yeah. All right. Well, this movie is not too complicated. At least it's a fairly easy story to follow, which is nice. So our movie opens up with we see a middle-aged gentleman with his young daughter. We can see that they both have a skin condition. They both have kind of very large birthmarks on their face and other parts of their body. And we see that the dad is a scientist and he's working on some kind of serum. We see him peeling skin off of lab rats, and then injecting that patch of skin with some kind of serum that he's working on. After injecting the skin with a serum and getting the reaction that he was looking for, he decides to go ahead and put the piece of skin right on his face, right on his, on his imperfections on his face to see if it starts to work. Well, as soon as he puts it on his face, the skin like magically starts to just graft onto his face, and it almost looks like it's healing his face. Unfortunately, it's suddenly discovered that the serum not only is patching up the bad bits of skin on his face, it's patching up every hole on his head. Literally, his lips seal up, his nostrils seal up, and then his eyelids seal up. I would imagine his ears probably sealed up as well, and his throat, everything else. Any other parts where he might have an opening on his face. We get a great scene where he takes a scalpel and he continuously tries to slice his mouth open. We see that his lips get grafted together, and he just grabs the scalpel and like 3 or 4 times in a row keeps slicing his mouth open. But obviously the serum is so strong that it keeps healing and it keeps closing until eventually Dad suffocates completely. Now it's 10 years later, and the daughter that the scientist left behind, who is named Wei, she is now moving to New Zealand to live with her aunt, who is also of Chinese descent, but obviously living in New Zealand. When she gets there, of course, it's the stranger in a strange land thing again. The girl, Wei, obviously feels out of place, and pretty much instantly, like as soon as she's introduced to her cousin that she's living with, the cousin just instantly has a negative opinion of her. She doesn't understand, like, the altar, how a lot of Asian people, after a family member dies, they'll create an altar in their house. Mexicans do it too, actually. And the cousin, whose name was Angela, she just, she may be Chinese by blood, but she's born and raised in New Zealand. So she's, Mike mentioned Americanized earlier. I think New Zealandized is the closer term, but I do know what Mike meant though. So, so instantly, right from the start, Wei is already catching shit from her cousin. Her aunt doesn't really seem ultra engaged with the family unit. It's basically just the aunt, the cousin Angela, and now Wei has joined them. So there's no male figure in the house. We noticed, or it's discovered that Wei still has her father's notebook with all of his notes in it, and it's trial and error and everything. She has just gotten a full scholarship to a university in New Zealand, a medical university, medical research university, and literally on her first day, she takes like one of those preliminary tests so that the professors could know kind of what they're dealing with, how much general knowledge these students have, blah, blah, blah. Wei is the only one who gets 100% on the test, which instantly makes her professor want her to be his lab assistant. And he basically, makes an announcement on the first day of class that if you're interested in being a lab assistant, there'll be a sign-up sheet. Unfortunately, Wei is about the only one who signs up at first. And basically, she starts talking about how her father was a scientist and what he was working on. The professor, whose name is Paul, I believe. Yeah, it is Paul. Paul basically starts asking questions, starts digging into what her father was working on. Once she gives Paul the information and even shares her father's notebook, Paul instantly sees an opportunity to take advantage of this girl. Obviously, he's going to try to take the scientific discovery for himself. Basically be, under the guise of he is the lead scientist at the university and she's just an assistant scientist. So even though it's her work, his name is on it as the lead scientist. So yeah, it's kind of a legal loophole there. But yeah, it's pretty much known instantly that Paul is just a piece of shit who's trying to take advantage of Wei. Eventually, we are introduced to Angela's friends, the cousin's friends. She has a couple of different friends. Eve, I believe. Yeah, Eve is one of the friends. She's like the hot blonde one. She's like the classic, hot, tall, statuesque blonde, blah, 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 who's constantly giving Wei shit because, again, she doesn't comprehend all of the traditional things that Wei does, that, the incense and the food and the altar, bothers both Angela and anybody else that comes into the house, blah, 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 which is causing a division between Wei and Angela and the rest of her friends. Eventually, through research, Wei finds a note in one of her father's notes about the corpse flower. And for those who don't know what the corpse flower is, it's a large flower that blooms, I believe, once every 5 years. But when it blooms, it releases one of the most ungodly, god-awful stenches you've ever smelled, apparently. It's called the corpse flower because it literally smells like rotting flesh when it blooms, and it only blooms like once every 5 years or something. So it's always a big deal. People will flock around to watch this thing. Obviously they'll probably wear gas masks and face masks and things like that to try to hide the scent, but it's usually a pretty big deal among plant lovers. As it turns out, there's a facility locally here in the town that actually has a corpse flower, and the flower just it has already bloomed. So the event is over. So the flower is just kind of locked up inside of the greenhouse, just kind of waiting to either go somewhere else or to, sit there for 5 years till it blooms again. Eventually, Wei reads that note in her father's notes about the potential healing factors of the sap from the corpse flowers, so she eventually breaks in. While all this is happening, we discover that Paul and Eve are actually having an affair. Yes, Paul, the professor, is fucking his hot blonde student, Eve. What's funny is there's a scene in this movie where Eve literally looks at Wei in the face and says, "You shouldn't fuck your professors for grades. We don't do that here." She literally just did it less than an hour ago. She literally fucked this guy less than an hour ago for grades, and she's telling Wei not to do it. So, I mean, it just kind of shows you the stupidity of the people in this and the hypocrisy of the people in this fucking town. So, like I said, Wei eventually ends up getting a bit of the sap from the corpse flower. She kind of infuses it into the serum that she already has, the serum that killed her father, that failed, and she discovers that the serum works. She takes a piece of skin off of her own thigh. She literally just in probably one of the most painful scenes in the goddamn movie. We watch this girl, this little petite Asian girl, slicing a chunk of skin off of her inner thigh so that she could test the serum and see if it'll reattach itself, which it does, with beautiful results. No scarring, no nothing. It literally looks all natural. So that night when she gets home, she realizes that the altar that she built for her father has been destroyed. And it was destroyed, of course, by her cousin Angela, who's basically not kept a secret in any way of how much she hates Wei and how much she hates all of the traditional shit that Wei does. Even though this dumb bitch is not paying the bills, her aunt is paying the bills, yet she seems to think that she's boss bitch of this house. So, again, more reasons to hate this character. When she comes home and realizes that her altar has been vandalized by her cousin, who admits to doing it, Angela attacks her. Wei attacks Angela. Just kind of pushes her. They end up falling to the floor. But then Angela starts fucking strangling Wei, which I'm at a loss. Like, what was the end game there? Were you actually gonna fucking kill your cousin because you didn't like her traditional shit? Like, oh my God. Yeah, just another character that, I wanted that guilty pleasure death because she was such a fucking piece of shit. Well, I didn't have to wait long because as Angela is strangling Wei reaches on the floor for a chopstick that she had just dropped on the floor right before the fight started, stabs Angela right in the fucking eye with a chopstick, and Angela dies instantly. Now, of course, we're talking about Wei, a college freshman, so she's 18, 19 years old. She just murdered her cousin. Auntie is never home, like I mentioned earlier, so, it's kind of convenient for Wei to do all of her little experiments while Auntie's away. But in Wei's panic, after accidentally killing her cousin, she starts freaking out, doesn't know what to do, but then she starts looking at her face and thinking, I might be able to do something with that. So then we get the scene that we all knew was coming. We see Wei peel Angela's face off, basically carve it out around the outer edge, peel it off, and then apply the serum, the new serum with the corpse flower sap in it. And then she puts Angela's face on her own face, and it grafts on perfectly. Like, she looks like Angela and everything. Luckily, her and Angela had the same hair, so. Sorry, folks, I had a cough there. Like I said, since they're both the same build and they both basically have long, straight black hair, it's going to be pretty easy for Wei to now start pretending that she's Angela, which is exactly what she does. We actually get this great scene of Wei watching like old videos of Angela and practicing her like idioms and whatnot in the mirror, like, her voice influx and, how she talks and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of an interesting scene seeing Wei, this little petite, shy girl all throughout this movie, and now she's trying to act like one of the cool kids. It's kind of interesting. But then she ends up getting away with it. Like, first her aunt comes home, and she sees Wei with Angela's face on and is instantly convinced, oh, that's Angela, that's my daughter. And then we get this nice heartwarming scene that the real Angela probably would have loved, because the real Angela had a little bit of an issue with her mom, kind of being disconnected and whatnot. And, the mom basically embraces Wei, thinking that it's Angela, and starts apologizing for never being home and, telling her that I genuinely do love you and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, shit, Mom, little too late for that, but okay. So then, yeah, she starts basically living as Angela for a couple of days, hanging out with the friends, and everybody's convinced it's Angela. Nobody's questioning her. Like, I think one of her friends maybe says, oh, are you sick or something? Because, you don't sound like yourself. But that's pretty much the only thing that anybody notices is different. Now, Angela does have a boyfriend, a black dude that goes to the school. He, as usual, he didn't, just like everybody else in the school, he doesn't know that that's not Angela behind that Angela's face. So they end up going to like a cliff side to kind of make out, to have a makeout session. And literally just as Wei mounts this kid, like she's about to make out with him, we start to see blood start pouring from her forehead. And it's CGI, but it actually looks pretty good for a CGI blood rip, if you will. And then the cut gets more and more, and then eventually Angela's face falls off of Wei onto the guy's face, because like I said, she's straddling him, so she's on top of him. The guy freaks out instantly, fucking hysterical, freaks out, pulls Angela's face off of his own, throws it to the ground, and then just starts slowly backing away from Wei. At this point, he knows it's not Angela now because her face fell off. This is the issue that I've always had with face peeling horror movies, is that sometimes the effect of looking at the person without their face looks terrible. And in this movie, it's a perfect example. Like, if Wei's face was peeled off, you would not be able to tell she's Asian, because the Asian look comes from the eyes. It comes from the eyelids, and how they rest on over the eye. But in this movie, after Angela's face peels off her, you can still tell that's an Asian girl under there. Like, that effect always bothers me, because listen, I've actually seen corpses with their faces missing, and it looks almost nothing like what we see in movies. I think the movie that got it the closest was Hellraiser. If you remember Julia in Hellraiser 2, the way that she looked with no skin on, that's about as accurate as I've ever seen a skinless body in a horror movie. So unfortunately, yeah, that's a little lacking in this one. Because like I said, if she doesn't have her face on, you're going to be able to see muscle tissue. You're going to be able to see the lines of the sinew, underneath the skin. It's going to look like, Julia from Hellraiser 2, like I said. So, some minor suspension of disbelief you have to get past, but it's something that's always bothered me with face peeling horror movies. It just doesn't always look right. So, anyway. Where were we? Oh, right. The boyfriend is freaking out. He's slowly kind of backing away from Wei and doesn't realize that he's right near a cliff. And of course, he falls off the cliff, somehow lands on top of a truck that just happened to be at the bottom of this, cliffside. But, again, whatever. It looks like the truck maybe went off the cliff previously, like weeks or months ago or something, or maybe somebody was getting rid of the vehicle and literally just let it roll off a cliff or something. But yeah, this kid basically falls and lands right on it. So at this point, Wei doesn't have a face on. She goes back home, reapplies the serum to Angela's face that has fallen off her, and reapplies Angela's face back onto her own. Unfortunately, it seems like every time she does it with the same face, the face deteriorates more and more. Like, you see skin kind of peeling off. Like, it almost looks like she just has a sunburn, or had a sunburn, and now her skin's peeling off. So obviously she needs to get a new face, which is something that, she didn't realize. She was hoping, obviously, as most scientists, she was hoping that the effects of the serum were permanent and that she could just live the rest of her life as Angela. By the way, Angela's body is underneath Wei's bed during this entire thing. Like, through the duration of the movie, it seems like. Finally, after she kills, let's get to that scene. She ends up running home. She reapplies the face, but then realizes that it doesn't look perfect like it did the first time. So that's when she calls Eve, the hot slut, and says, hey, let's go shopping tomorrow. They go shopping. They end up back at her house, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, Angela attacks Eve. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, that's brilliant. No one's going to be able to accuse Wei of doing this because she's wearing Angela's face. So even if Eve survives this attack, she's going to go to the police and say Angela attacked me, not Wei. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of an extra little bonus that you don't think about. But like I said, we get this cool scene where she attacks Eve. Eve runs out of the house. But rather than running to her car and trying to get away, she ends up going to a reflecting pool that they have in the back of this house, because they live in a mansion, by the way. I forgot to mention, it's a frickin' mansion that they live in. There's a reflecting pool in the back of the house. So Eve runs out the back door and hides in the reflecting pool. She literally goes down in there. But I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, how long do you think you can hold your breath? Well, as expected, just as Wei, with Angela's, torn up face still on her, gets there, that's when Eve underwater starts losing her breath and starts blowing out bubbles. And instantly, Wei sees Eve under the water, and she's got a fucking power drill with her with a long drill bit on it. She sees Eve under the water, grabs her by the hair, and then just does a driller killer on her head. Probably one of the more satisfying deaths in the movie, honestly. And then it's rinse and repeat from there. She peels Eve's face off, adds the serum, and then puts Eve's face on. Unfortunately, if you guys remember, I told you earlier that Eve was blonde, and Wei is, of course, an Asian girl with very dark black hair. So what we end up getting is Wei dyes her hair blonde to try to match Eve as much as possible, so that she can, now start living as Eve for a little while. Excuse me, folks. Okay, so after she becomes Eve for a little while, or after she becomes Eve, she realizes that her notebook is missing. At this point, she realizes that her father's notebook is missing. All of his notes, all of his, trial and error, everything, it's missing. And then we see that Paul, the professor, has it. He basically stole it from from Wei. And he is, of course, going to take the credit for the scientific discovery. He ends up taking pictures of the inside of the book because, of course, the book is in Chinese, or, whatever the native language is for Wei and her father, Mandarin or whatever, and ends up taking pictures of it and sending it to a translator friend of his. He sends it to the translator. The translator comes back to him saying, dude, I don't know what the fuck this is. It's like Chinese torture porn. This isn't scientific discovery in any way, shape, or form. And then after Paul gets off the phone, he continues looking through the notebook, and then he finds a picture of the corpse flower that was hand drawn into the notebook, and he realizes, oh shit, Wei must have figured out that the corpse flower sap is the missing ingredient. So then Paul goes to the same greenhouse that had the corpse flower, and he's going there to try to create his own serum. Unfortunately, Eve sucked that thing dry. I said Eve again. Wei basically sucked that thing dry, because when Paul, the professor, gets there, it's destroyed. It's all twisted and knotted. It's dead as shit. So obviously he starts to realize, damn it, Wei has already been here. At this point, he already knows that Wei is aware of the missing notebook, and that Wei is also aware that this guy's going to try to steal her father's work. I mean, he literally says it in so many words. I'm the lead scientist. It's my work. It's no longer yours or your father's, blah, blah, blah. So what ends up happening is as Wei, with Eve's face on, decides to go visit Paul. Now, don't forget, Paul and Eve have been fucking. They're the student-teacher, inappropriate relationship. So when Paul sees Eve arrive, he thinks that she's there for sex. So he busts out a bag of cocaine, and he's celebrating because he thinks that he figured out, the whole thing with the corpse flower, and, he probably figures he could just get another corpse flower. It's not like there's only one in the entirety of the island of New Zealand. But, he basically wants to celebrate. Eve, obviously, Wei, wearing Eve's face, obviously is there to find her notebook. She ends up finding a hidden, panel underneath the bar in Paul's house, and she doesn't find her notebook, but she finds a vial of serum, and she realizes, oh shit, Paul figured out the corpse flower thing and made his own serum. So she takes the vial of serum with her and leaves the house. After she leaves, Paul then realizes that the door to his bar is open. The cabinet door is open. He opens it up, opens the secret compartment, realizes that the vial is missing, and then he freaks out. But then he goes around to the other side of the bar, opens up yet another secret compartment, and pulls out Way's father's notebook. So he is still in possession of the notebook, but Way took the sample that he created. So, of course, Paul follows Way back to her house, which is actually Angela's house. And when he gets there, Eve's face is already worn off. Like Way has already, again, another painful scene. Way is peeling Eve's face off of herself in anticipation of Paul, because she knows Paul's going to follow her back to the house. So she ends up just kind of sitting in the middle of the living room floor, facing with her back to the door so that Paul doesn't see who it is right away. Paul ends up walking in, seeing the girl there in the dress that Eve was just wearing at his house. So he thinks it's Eve. So he's like, "Hey, Eve, what's going on? Where's Way? Why are you here?" Like, he's not even sure why Eve is there. But then Way starts to talk, and it's her voice. It's Way's voice. It's not the Eve voice that she had been practicing. And that's when Paul realizes, oh shit, you took Eve's face, didn't you, to try to get the notebook back from me? Well, you're not going to get the notebook. Again, Paul doubles down on his original threat. You're not getting the notebook. It's my research now. You can just go fuck yourself. Well, Paul at that point says, "Where's my serum? Where's my vial? I just want my vial so I can get out of here and never talk to you again." Of course, Way tells him, "Oh, the serum is in the fridge." So he goes over to the fridge, opens the fridge, and there's Eve's severed head missing her face in the refrigerator. This house must be so full of bodies at this point. Way also in another scene ends up killing the only girl that's been nice to her this whole movie, only because that girl, I think her name was Jasmine, ended up finding Eve's head in the fridge as well. So she basically takes some saran wrap and just covers her face and, murders her. And you can see that Way actually does kind of feel bad about doing it, because this is the only girl in this whole city that's treated her like a human being, but she had to kill her because she found Eve's head. So as soon as Paul opens the refrigerator, sees the severed head in the back of the fridge, we see one of those large industrial medical syringes, one of those big metal ones. Way just plunges it into his neck, pushes down on the plunger, and Paul passes out instantly. The scene fades to black, and then when it fades back up, it's a few minutes later. Paul is now tied to a table in Way's living room, and she's just gone completely batshit insane at this point. She's dancing around Paul. The table that Paul is strapped to, she's dancing around it like she's celebrating or something. And then Paul finally wakes up, and he's tied to the table, and obviously Way starts fucking with him. "Oh, you're awake, yay, we can continue now." And then basically Way just looks at him and says, "You wanted my father's research so badly, you wanted my father's science, well, fucking have it." And she ends up giving Paul the serum, the version of the serum that killed her father. So she puts the serum on his face, and we start to see his eyes start to seal up shut, his nostrils start to seal up shut. And then just as his mouth starts to seal up, she puts a straw in his mouth. So literally he has a way to breathe. It's like she doesn't want to kill him right away, or maybe she doesn't want to kill him at all. She just wants him to be fucking tortured for the rest of his life. At that moment, just as I don't know if Eve was gonna, or if Way was gonna finish the job or not, but at that exact moment, the nosy neighbor that I have failed to mention this entire walkthrough ends up walking into the house, catching Way attacking Paul, She ends up calling the police. Wei ends up running away. Now, there's one other character in the movie I forgot to mention that actually is mildly important. He is John, the homeless man. Early in the movie, when she first gets to university, she ends up meeting this homeless guy named John because she's lost and she's asking for directions to the science building. John also has a facial deformity. It's much worse than Wei's, though. Wei is basically just like on the side of her neck. Whereas this guy looks like he's a burn victim. It looks like he got literally like 3rd-degree burns over his entire fucking body. And now he looks like the guy from RoboCop after he got dipped in the nuclear waste. Pretty fucked up. Anyway, Wei ends up befriending this guy, giving him food. She brings him food every day. And then one day she tells him, I'm going to fix us. I'm going to make us beautiful again. And then John basically looks at her and says, Wei, you already are beautiful. And that's kind of an issue that I have with this movie. Now, listen, I understand that as a teenage girl, society's definition of beauty basically drives you to, try to be as beautiful as what society expects you to. But I'm sorry, Wei was fucking beautiful. Just because you have some minor skin imperfection on the side of your neck, that doesn't make you fucking ugly. And it sucks that somebody didn't say that to Wei. Somebody didn't like sit her down and say, look, okay, you've got some discoloration on your neck, but you're a beautiful girl. So what? There's some discoloration on your neck. Yeah, it sucks while you're in high school. You're going to have to catch shit from, stupid kids making fun of you all the way through college probably and into your adult years. But it's like...
The homeless guy did.
Yeah, the homeless guy was the only one who said, Wei, you are beautiful. But apparently that didn't carry enough weight to make Wei happy because, like I said, I'm watching this whole movie and I'm like, you're not ugly. She keeps calling herself ugly. And I'm like, any guy would be fucking lucky to be with you. You're fucking beautiful.
When you're a teenager, though, you're gonna...
No, I understand. Yeah, 19-year-old girl, society's, definition of beauty, kind of fucks with the brain of a teenage girl. I totally understand all of it. What I'm railing against is that like why didn't the aunt say something? You'd have thought the aunt would have been like, oh, you don't need to wear that scarf. You're beautiful. You just have some skin imperfection on your neck or whatever. So yeah, just really, like I said, and which also kind of leads to why I don't feel that Wei's psychosis is earned in this movie. She just goes crazy for no fucking reason. Yes, there are a couple of instances of bullying that I kind of glossed over, but I just don't feel like it was enough for Wei to decide, I'm going to murder all these people and steal their face. It just really came out of nowhere. So anyway, the movie ends with Wei. Wei is running away from the house. The neighbor has already called the cops. Wei still has the vial. She has another vial of her father's version of the formula. And she's just running away. She basically just filled up like a go bag with like her notes, some clothes, and just, some scientific stuff. And she had a vial of her father's formula in her hand. Well, she's running away. Eventually, the cops do catch up to her, and they're very close to her. They're giving chase on foot. And she finally sees John. She sees John in an alley, and John has this big-ass blanket around him. And Wei is basically running towards John saying, John, I need help. Hide me, hide me. John opens up his blanket, and then Wei kind of jumps into the blanket while John closes it. Unfortunately, when Wei jumps into John's blanket, the vial breaks. The vial that's in her hand ends up breaking. The police catch up. They ask John, have you seen a girl run by here? John points them in the wrong direction, of course, like the good guy that he is. But then as soon as the cops leave, he opens up his coat, and suddenly Wei and John are fucking fusing. They're doing a color out of space. They're literally fusing together into one form, into a pretty fucking gnarly form. And then we get like an epitaph scene where we see the aunt. Obviously, the aunt is very sad. She lost her daughter. She lost her niece. She obviously lost everybody in her family because now she lives alone in that fucking mansion. And we see her in a restaurant having a meal. She's crying. She ends up leaving the restaurant. And as she's leaving, she thinks that she sees Wei. So she starts following this woman, and she starts calling out to her, Wei, is that you, Wei? Finally, the woman stops and turns around, and that's when we see that, oh, it's not Wei. It is a girl that looks mildly similar, but it's not actually her. The aunt then apologizes and turns around to walk away. As she turns around, the camera pans down and we see the new Wei John creature, and we get a close-up of its face. And yeah, this is where I'll agree with Mike, that it has similarities to the monster at the end of The Substance, where it's both Demi Moore and the young girl kind of fused together into one, mishmash of mongoloid flesh. Well, that's exactly what we get here. John and Wei are now together. They're fused together. We basically get a close-up of the head. We see 3 different eyes. One of the eyes is down near the cheek, and it's blinking, which fucking creeped me out as soon as that eye blinked. We also see, almost like coming out of the mouth, we see a hand. We see a hand with fingers, almost like coming out of the mouth and covering the mouth. Like, this was a pretty fucked up looking thing. Unfortunately, we don't see the whole shot. We just see a close-up of the face. And that's pretty much where our credits roll and our movie is over. Now, we do get a mid-credit scene where we see the neighbor, the one who called the police on Wei, now with Angela's dog. There was a dog in the movie that I didn't even bring up once. It's Angela's dog, and basically as soon as Angela is killed by Wei, the dog basically barks continuously for the rest of the movie. And the neighbor constantly complains about the dog. Well, during the closing credits, we see that the neighbor has now adopted the dog, and she's basically sitting on her couch. After spending the entirety of this movie complaining about the dog and saying, I'm going to call the cops if you don't shut that thing up and stop it from barking, she went ahead and adopted it, and now she has it, which is weird because the aunt is still alive, don't forget. Yes, Angela's gone, but you'd have thought that the aunt would want to take care of the dog, but I guess she didn't. I guess she was okay with giving it to the neighbor. And that's it, folks. That is Grafted 2025. Like I said, not objectively a bad movie, but it left me, like, every time something somewhat horror happened, I wished that there was more. I wish that they would have gone more over the top. I wish they would have, I don't know. Like, this is a Shudder movie, so, and even if they didn't know that this was going to play on Shudder as they were making it, they knew it was a VOD movie, so I'm just not sure why they kind of neutered all the kills, and the movie wasn't nearly as fun, gory, exciting as it could have been, and that's just really too bad. But like I said, check it out. You judge for yourself. Obviously, I'm the lowest of the 3 of us on the movie, but maybe you'll love it, and I hope you do. I genuinely do. So yeah, that's it for me, Mike.
All right. Well, that said, I guess that's going to wrap up this episode of Fresh Cuts. What's next? Companion, right? In the theater?
I believe so, yes.
And we're sure this one's a genuine horror movie, or are we going to pull another one like this?
I mean, hey, who knows? I don't watch trailers, so I'm not the guy to ask.
I mean,
I only go by synopses and or the description, like if it actually says, horror. And technically, Presence said drama horror, but I think that was a reach.
Well, I'm only asking just because Companion's that AI thriller kind of a thing.
Exactly. I'll see it early this week. I'll see it either Thursday or Friday, and I'll report back, just like this week. But yeah, as of right now, that's the plan. Companion.
Yeah, if not, we can switch it if we have to. I would say the trailer makes it seem like it's horror, and so I can say that, but who knows? Like, yeah, once you actually it could end up being like a psychological thriller. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
Venom. Anything new for people to hear?
A couple
from
things,
you?
yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I got a couple of shows in the can that are in the process of being edited. The first is No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. That's episode number 34, where we looked at our first cel-shaded animated feature-length movie, and that was, of course, Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham, which is basically Batman in the Lovecraft universe, set in the 1920s. There's a couple of scenes in Antarctica, so it's very faithful to the original book. If you're as big a Lovecraftian fan as I am, then you're familiar with At the Mountains of Madness, and you would be familiar with this Batman story. So yeah, check out that episode. That should be out sometime before the end of this week. Oh, definitely. It'll probably be out like maybe a day or two after you hear this one, because I'd imagine Mike will have this one out tomorrow, and I'll probably finish editing tomorrow. So yeah, look out for that one. And then we also have the return of the Crystal Lake Gift Shop with Mike and the lovely Miss Lacey Lou. This was episode 6, so of course that means we talked about episode 6 of the original Friday the 13th, the series, which was entitled The Great Montero, our first magic-based episode of Friday the 13th, the series. So that one probably won't be out until probably February sometime, as that one is not nearly as high a priority for me. So look for that one in February. And I'm sure Mike will talk about the main show that we just recorded, and I think that's everything I have.
Dawn, what about you? And did you watch Into the Deep yet? And if so, how was it?
I'm not watching Into the Deep until Shark Week. I need something to cover for me.
All right.
I don't.
Woo, Shark Week.
Mike, come on. There's very little. There's very little content for me left, so I have to stockpile. And as much as I want to give it my 10 out of 10 review at this point, content requires me to say not yet. So yeah, can't say anything about it other than I'll take a look at it for Shark Week. But until then, I need something to carry me over until then. So
When is Shark Week?
It's usually second week of July.
Okay.
I don't know because I haven't heard the official announcement yet, but that's usually been when they've done it. So I would imagine sometime around there. But yeah, other than that, the only other thing for me is I mentioned it last week where where I'm going to do a guest spot on a friend's show where we look at a special round robin style. It's kind of one of those where we pick a topic and we select a bunch of movies that fall into that topic, and then we come up with a special, ranking of like which one's the best one, which one's, top dog in this particular bracket. And the one we're doing is werewolves. But I should warn you, we're looking at utter dog shit werewolf movies. Yeah, the highest rated movie on this list is I think it's one of the Howling sequels, actually. That should give you an idea of like what that should give you an idea of like where we are in terms of like what's the best werewolf movie. So we're working our way through like a lot of like really obvious indie low budget stuff. So don't expect masterpieces. I'm expecting watchable as like the best. So yeah, we're doing that. And then yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I've got on my end.
All right. As far as me, unnamed, the main show, what is it? Episode 64 was recorded a day before we recorded this show that you're listening to. And probably sometime later this week, it'll be out. We did The Clairvoyant, aka The Killing Hour, and Cruising with the William Friedkin movie. And then everything else we do on the main show. We talk movies we've been watching, not covered on Fresh Cuts, although they don't even necessarily always have to be new releases, just kind of anything we've been watching, and we'll discuss news and anything and all that good stuff. It's more of an all-encompassing horror genre show. And yeah, like I said, probably a few days from when you're listening to this, it'll be out. A little more editing to do on the main show. And yeah, other than that, we already said we'll likely be doing companion unless we need to switch it. So with that said, thanks everyone for listening to another episode. Let's say bye to listeners.
Later.
If you're gonna go crazy, at least earn it. Don't just go crazy for no reason.
Peace.